So, Janine, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. You know, probably like yourselves, you get a lot of different invitations to attend a number of different conferences, but to have one really focused on cosmetics and innovation, it seemed like a must-have or an easy place to pick. I know I'm the last speaker here, so I'll try to keep it brief. It's also Friday afternoon, so I apologize. I'm not going to try any Chinese, as my L'Oreal colleagues know. Hen bu hao, right? Translation will not work. So if you forgive me for my English. What I wanted to do today is, well, actually, maybe connect first with a story when I was coming in this morning. Normally on Mondays and Fridays, for those of us who live in Shanghai, traffic is a little bit worse. And I don't know if you've ever noticed some of these bicycles that are usually collecting recycled styrofoam or recycled cardboard, where there was one stopped. There was a traffic, I think there was an accident in front of us, and one was stopped. And he had it piled high on the bicycle, maybe about 3-4 meters high, big rope. I think something might have come undone, so he was retying it back. But the problem, of course, was that it was completely tilted. So all of the weight on one end, and he couldn't get on the bike and get it down far enough to start pedaling. And he kept trying, and it wasn't working. So he had an extra piece of rope. He then hooked it over a lamppost that was nearby, and then cantilevered it over, and then started off. It just, for me, it really talks about the determination and the creativity that I'm very fortunate to see every day here in the colleagues that I work with, in the consumers that we create products for here in China. So my talk today is about Innovate for China and Inspire the World. And by inspire, I want to talk a little bit about what I mean by that. What I mean is not just developing products in China for the rest of the world, right? Because if you're a multinational company, you could always choose to do that. Someone can write on a piece of paper, today you in China are going to do this. And then you can say whether or not you have the right people, the right staffing, the right equipment. And if you're a local company, you say, well, I have no choice. If I'm going to produce for something outside, I have to innovate here. But what I mean by the word inspire is that you're creating something that your colleagues around the world are going, that's really interesting. Let me see if there's something here that might work for my consumers. So first, a little bit about L'Oreal. So we are a beauty company. We believe very fundamentally that beauty can enrich and transform every person's life, whether they, regardless of race, religion, and age, men and women around the world. We also have a concept that we call universalization. And by that, what we mean is not beauty, one standard type of beauty everywhere around the world, but rather talking about the diversity of beauty, embracing that diversity, and meeting those different needs around the world. We also have an ambition to add another 1 billion consumers worldwide. And to do that, we have to be in places like China. We have a strong commitment to research and innovation. Our company itself has been founded by a chemist, and we actually began our relationships in terms of research with an outside party here in China before we even began our first building and our first full-time people. So this is fundamentally the investment that we believe and how we succeed. In terms of what we have here in Shanghai, we have around 300 people, 300 scientists and engineers, covering the entire spectrum from very upstream advanced research, looking at artificial reconstructed skin models through traditional Chinese medicine, as was just speak, all the way through down to innovating the products here for China and for around the world, and curating those insights. So that gives us the spectrum that we can leverage, and to do that very much in a coordinated fashion with our other colleagues from around the world. There's also two elements that we think are fundamental to our approach. We call this our push-pull model. One is deep consumer understanding and translating that also into technical measures, so we can understand what is the consumer needs and desires, and equally investing in science and technology, because we know some of those breakthrough ideas take some time to develop, and we have to be really much at the forefront. And those ideas can come at any place, and we're always working together in that context to try to build our expertise in both sides. So I want to share two examples here as illustrations of how we've created some innovations in China and how they may have inspired others, at least in the L'Oreal world and in other countries. First is BB. And to do this, I have to go back in time to probably around 2007, before BBs were ever introduced or anyone ever heard of a BB. And at that time, there were still traditional foundations here in China. But the consumers, in terms of what they liked about that or their appreciation, was very different. Most women had tried a foundation, but it was usually for my wedding picture or for a picture at a spring festival. But that's not something I wanted to wear every day. It was too artificial, it was too white, didn't like the feel in terms of how it left my skin, either too greasy or too cakey. We also, at the same time, identified a trend coming from Korea. Now, there's an infinite, for those of us who've looked at Korea, there's an infinite number of products that come from Korea. And they have a much more sophisticated, particularly back in 2007, a much more sophisticated face regime in terms of skincare and makeup. But there still was something there in terms of the product idea. So then we combine that with a really in-depth technical understanding, first of Chinese consumers. So we have run a typology study with over 2,000 women to really understand what's the difference in terms of the color of their face, of the starting natural color with bare skin. That intrinsic understanding then laid the foundation, because obviously if you want to get to some end result, you need to know what the starting point is. And we fundamentally understood that starting point and being able how to group it. Then, what is the end desire? What is it that women would like? We know they didn't like that white artificial. What is it that they liked? So our consumer market insight group delved into what is their desires, their wish, what is their ideal beauty. And it's not that exact white, it's more of a natural fairness, a little rosy, lack of yellow, and something that does not connote dullness. So we understood what the aspiration was in terms of color. We understood what the baseline was. And then we came about it via really desaturation. So being able to look at what pigments could we add in terms of color that would get the right hue, so that yellow connotes dullness. Don't want to be too red, but a little bit of red, of rosy, when you're in the context of white, adds in the right color, right? And then from a chroma standpoint, what level of saturation is that color? And then that ideal space, combined with their starting point, allowed us to create, from a color standpoint, what is that sensation that consumers want, that she wants from a BB. But that's one half of a BB, is the color. The other aspect, right, is the caring element. Again, the traditional ones tend to be either too greasy or too drying. Neither an end result that was desired. We understood in a similar manner that I described for color, what is the desire from a consumer standpoint? We know that hydration is a key element within skin. We know it has to be still a fresh. And in the context when you're talking about makeup, particularly back then, it has to be easy to use. So these are three elements that were critical. Then the aspect about really combining these together. We understood additional benefits like UV protection that we were able to incorporate in. We made certain that we had hydration as a must-have, and that clinically proven after 24 months. And then we're able to combine the aspects of the care, of the innovation of the care, with the innovation of the color, and launch BB to a large success and very high levels of consumer satisfaction. And today, a product that's used by a large number of Chinese women on a very routine basis, which for makeup is still a developing market. Okay. At the same time, also was able to translate and get an inspiration, if you will, from around the world, to many countries around the world. Now, it doesn't mean it's the exact same product, and that's what I mean by inspiration, but using also the innovation in the approach. So, for example, in the West, in the US, starting color is going to be different from a typology standpoint. So that's going to be different. The end look of the desired is going to be different. But by using that same approach, you can then create what is the right pigment. Similarly, on a care standpoint, it's different. What they want in terms of feel, not as hydrating, they're more concerned about oily and greasy, so it tends to be a little bit drying and have a drag. And these are the things that we would be able to understand and innovate for. But it's the same principle. And we're able to take that and become really number one on BBs around the world. But it doesn't just stop there. We obviously, as we all know, innovation is a continuous. That's why we all have job security, at least we hope. And from that, we look at what other ideas we can. As now, BB has expanded to CC and other elements, right? We're looking at what else can we do. One of the aspects is about pigments and how we can also innovate on pigments. So here we've created a patented magic beads, a microencapsulation that consists of different components. First, we understood that consumers want to have more and more skin benefits. How can we incorporate that in with traditional pigments? And that's where the idea for these microencapsulation, the magic beads, came about. We've incorporated a pigment that will be the end pigment in the core here, wrapped in skincare ingredients to enhance that even more, and on the outside, another set of pigments so they can fit more with what is the connotation today for Chinese consumers on skincare. The end result of that is, and I'm not sure how well it comes out today, is, for example, you could begin with a product that is white, like a traditional skincare. Upon sheer force breaking the beads, you then release enhanced skincare agents and the pigments that will give you that end desired look. At the same time, by releasing those ingredients, we increase the skincare benefits significantly in the areas of fairness, radiance, smooth, and also wrinkle reduction. And that can transform into different formats. So we're continuing to innovate in this area, also inspired by our colleagues as they look beyond, as they think, as we recognize BB is just not one way, it can enhance further, and that's how we continue to build. So one example of BB, how we've taken down that road of innovation and how it's also inspired our colleagues and we continue to innovate from. Let me switch from makeup and face care to hair care and talk about a different example here. First, Chinese hair is much more prone to damage. Chinese consumers say this, we've heard this, but why is that? So we began by fundamentally understanding why. Similar type of typology study of what is different here. So we observed a number of things. Some are very obvious to understand, right? Hair is generally a little bit longer, has different diameter, more of elliptical shape. But we didn't stop there. We dug a little bit deeper. What is really different? And one of the key differences that we found was the cuticle itself, and that it was a much more open. The angle that it was open was more than 20% than Caucasian hair greater, and also the size of the cuticle itself was a little bit less. Combined with the shape means it's going to be a lot more open and then susceptible to any damage that comes in. That was a fundamental understanding that then allowed us to translate what we would need to do differently. We also then have verified of what we heard from consumers of where this difference is in terms of both chemical and physical damage. Right? So whether it's coloring hair, perming hair, or straightening in the case of Caucasian hair, and how that translates also from a physical parameter. So we understood what was happening in terms of the hair fibers and being able to measure that difference. And that's that consumer understanding that we talked about. We also then understand the consumer habits and the trade-off here from their desires. In this case, for Chinese hairs, you have two elements that you're challenged with. One is the root itself. They want it to be clean. But at the tips, they need to have the care, right? And as that, at the tips, it's going to be older hair. It's going to experience more damage. And that's where consumers see it. So you have a degree where you need the cleaning at the roots, but the real care at the tips. Then you have to try to find what is the space, right? For those working hair care, probably not necessarily new, but you have this challenge here of, I know how to create a shampoo that cleans. I know how to do that. Check the box. The problem is, then it's not caring enough at the tips. Okay? I know how to create one that will win and condition the best at the tips, but the problem is, it's gonna be too greasy at the roots. So how to really find that sweet spot. And in this case, we've created a patented, unique technology that allows us, going back to understanding the cuticles and the behavior, how to best hit that sweet spot. And what we find is we can get a much more longer lasting clean than you would out of traditional caring shampoos, and get significantly better care. And deliver that in a way that consumers notice and appreciate and is superior. We've put that behind our flagship brand, Multi-Repair 5, and we've continued to see market growth behind this here in China. But then also, this same approach and same idea has also been inspiring for our colleagues around the world. But their needs are going to be different, so it's going to translate in a different way. Indian consumers oil their hair first, so it's a different context, and they look more to nourish. So how do we rebalance in that context? Brazilian women equate beauty first with their hair, but they do an enormous array of treatments to their hair. And that creates a lot of damage. So how can we use the same approach and the same type of patented technology to create and use this chassis in Brazil? In the US, there's lots of concerns more with weakness and leaving hair lifeless. Again, similar type of technology. You have very different hair than China, but a similar approach to being able to do that. In Europe, a high level of coloring here, which also can damage it. How can we use the same insights from a technical, from a consumer, and a technology standpoint to marry that together? This really allows us to take the leverage of what is relevant locally and build upon that for global success. And it's a virtual cycle. So we don't see it just stopping. We continue to learn from each other. But I think personally today we're at a point where China is not just the right arm of research center elsewhere, but really is creating innovation that can translate and inspire elsewhere. So if I tie these two examples together again, really a fundamental consumer understanding, both from a desire standpoint, both in terms of how to translate those into real technical insights, and bringing real science and technology behind that. And it's that marriage, that interface of the two, that really drives and inspires innovation. As I said, and when you do that, and you do that successfully, I think that innovation is at the point today where it can inspire your colleagues anywhere around the world. So with that, thank you very much.
Bravo. Okay, who has some questions? Oh, good. You're always good with the questions.
When you talk about the makeups, and there's a pattern, it's like a press releasing, changing color, and then release the skincare nutrients. So what's the insight from Chinese customer wanting to make the color changing for the foundation? Because usually, particularly for the mass market, right? When you want to use that one shade, this is the color they want. Why do they want to change color?
It's a good question. So you're asking, why is it that they want to change color? So it's not necessarily in the example that I used here, because there are different examples I could have used, but let me go back for a second if I can. Forgive me when I just show the... So let me illustrate what is the consumer desire for that. And for the case for makeup, on one hand, consumers share the same desire of wanting their face to have a pinkish glow, for example. And I don't necessarily have that today. I might have, or at the end of the day, more of a yellow, dullish look. But for some consumers, just using this color to begin with, which a lot of BBs today have, is a little bit concerning, because I'm putting something artificial on my skin. But that same consumer is very happy and uses a lot of skincare products that look more white and more caring. So insight could be, this is more caring and following the codes of what is a skincare product, turning white. This is more what I would like to look like in terms of when it's applied to the desired end look. I go back to that color chart, and that's the aspect. The color change of itself is not what consumers are looking for per se. They're looking for it on their face, not from a technology. The enhancement of, am I getting better skincare, which is actually true because we're adding in skincare ingredients that we can see a measurable benefit for, and it's transforming in terms of the end result in a way that isn't looking artificial, but is more of a desired end look.
Thank you for Thank you for a great presentation. So I actually have a question regarding the setup of your R&D center here. You mentioned that you have over 300 scientists here and doing from skin models to PCMs. So my question is, how much of the technology innovation is actually done in China, or is mostly is focused on applying the technology innovations from the rest of the world to the Chinese market?
So we do fundamental research here in China, and we have a significant investment in terms of resources that do that. But we're also part, as L'Oreal, of a larger organization. So our terminology for that is a multipolar organization. And what we mean by that is that we be able to benefit from each other in a very coordinated way. So there's some elements that we lead. There's some elements that might be led by the team in the US, another element that might be led by the team in Paris. And we coordinate that very much. So some are obvious. Traditional Chinese medicine, right, would be led here. Ayurvedic and Indian medicine would be led out of our team in Bangalore. So there's some things like that that are very obvious. But there's others where we just lead as well, and some we lead on a global basis. So it's very much coordinated, and we do fundamental research here. For L'Oreal as a company, has a history of inventing new molecules, and we work at that level as well here in Shanghai.
I'd like to ask a question about price to quality ratio for L'Oreal products here in China. Because I'm from Russia, and in Russia, L'Oreal products, especially shampoos and skincare products, are considered higher end, so they're not so price competitive. But here, and they're supposed to be higher quality. But here in China, I find that L'Oreal products are their price is very competitive for Chinese market, and I wonder, do we still get a safe and high quality product here in China?
So the question is about safety and quality for China.
Yes.
So these are non-negotiables for us at L'Oreal. There's never ever a time where we will trade off quality or safety. It's not a strategy. It is part of our DNA. We will not, right? The company was founded by producing a color-safe dye. So it is in our DNA. It's not. There's no question. There's no profit that can be made. There's no sales number that anyone will ever convince anybody of to do that. Right? So we work to the absolute highest standard. We obviously meet every regulations here in China, and we work to our own highest standard to deliver that.
Okay, thank you.
In terms of the color change, I just wondering, it depends on the time. For example, in the morning, it's white, so it means like it's carrying, and then in the late afternoon, it's a pinkish, to just cover like it's a dull skin or something like that.
Your question is from
in terms of the technology, it's about just the color change. It depends on the time, or just immediately when you apply this product, it becomes this color. It's different color.
You mean this particular magic beads? Is that,
yes. Right.
Okay, sorry. Yes, for magic beads, it's an instant transformation. So it is a transformation that happens. You can. So we've created the same technology to use in a white product. This is also for around the world to use in a gel. It's an immediate effect, so it is shear sensitive. So when you apply it, it releases and it transforms. And then obviously you can control completely the degree of pigmentations that you add there, and you can control the pigments on the outside. As I said, in this case, it's white. We have it in terms of a gel product as well.
How many research centers do you have all over the world, and how many do you have in Asia?
So we have 6 major hubs. So that means really large R&I centers around the world. They are obviously Paris, of which we have a number of different centers there, but that we view as one hub where we've been founded. We have in the US, Brazil, Japan, Shanghai, and in India. India, 2 locations, Mumbai and Bangalore. And then we're looking to build one in Africa. Is the next. Then we have a number of satellite organizations that give us insights from around the world, for example, and connect us, whether it's looking at trends, whether it's looking at science and technology, whether it's from a consumer evaluation, for example, in Korea, Singapore, and Indonesia, etc.
Do they have different focus for different centers?
Yes, we have different focus based on business strategy and where it's coordinated. So we do that. So yes. No, I think I can answer. So, for example, from a business standpoint, China is a large market. So, my first and our team's first mission is to innovate for China. Our Japan team, our Japanese business is smaller, but Japan and Korea are really big centers for innovation and technology. So their first mission from an R&I center is to look at what innovations they can create for Asia and around the world. And then we talk every day. And we work programs in an integrated way. Did that answer your question?
Hi. I would like to ask for your opinion regarding the China and its different geography from north, east, and south. And do you foresee any implication when it comes to MPD and targeting the different consumer needs, even within China?
So China as a whole and the differences amongst different regions and centers and cities. So that's a very good question. So yes, it is different. Yes, it will evolve, and probably not in a linear way. So that is our challenge, to go understand that. But it's not like we haven't done that before. It's not fundamentally different than today. We manage our business in North America on a North American business, and coming from Canada, how you do things in Canada, and when you're talking cold, and cold is minus 30 degrees, and you're talking cold to the people in Florida, and cold is I might have seen snow twice in my life. So it is very different in your skincare properties. Everything is completely different. So we know how to do that, but it does speak to the importance of really understanding the consumer, working on technologies, also from an innovation ecosystem, and being connected in that manner.